Penanda, well, good afternoon. Welcome to the IFA Wales Cymru organised session for the Innovations Festival, where we're going to be hearing from different bits of innovation and practice from across the archaeological community in Wales. We've got a mixture of archaeological trusts and Royal Commission, other organisations and individuals, and universities as well. It's sort of I think one of the strengths of Welsh archaeology is that we genuinely are quite an integrated group of archaeologists. Well, we shall see. You can prove me wrong. My name's Martin Locock. I'm chairing the session this afternoon. I actually work at the University of Wales, Trinity St David, which you may know better as what used to be Lampeter University. It's gone through several different name changes and mergers and things, but we are the successor body for that. So welcome again, and now we're going to dive in with our first talk, which is Julian Ravest talking about marks in the landscape. So I'll allow you to introduce yourself, Julian, if that's all right.
I switched my own video off so I don't get distracted by seeing myself out of the corner of my eye. I always find it a bit unnerving. However, to it, and to put my presentation in context, I'm an amateur. I take pictures with a drone. I am non-commercial, and I am not an archaeologist. In short, I'm an example of the democratization of aerial photography. There are advantages in being an amateur. Not least, I can photograph what I like, do what I like, and what I feel passionate in. The problem is, of course, that I'm under-resourced. Although I do have time on my hands, I am retired. But under-resourced, yes. So I suffered great equipment envy when I saw yesterday's presentation. Fortunately, advances in technology have meant that technology and software are now available and accessible to amateurs such as myself. I bought my Phantom 4 drone in 2016, and since then I've taken some 44,000 photographs with it, all GPS tagged with other metadata and so easily searchable. I have contributed to around 400 HER site records and created around 100 new records. I'm in the process of preparing my photographs for archiving. I have also used the photographs in numerous talks to non-specialists and specialist audiences, exhibited my photographs in local museums, created YouTube videos. Others have also used my images in publications and videos. I'm lucky in that I moved to mid-Wales about 5 years ago. There is a lot of landscape here, and it is archaeologically rich. This is one of my first photographs in 2016. In just this one photo, there are Bronze Age cairns, standing stones, stone rows, field systems of different periods, and looming out of the mist in the background, the Iron Age hill fort of Castlebank. Today I will show a few examples of my work. The selection was very difficult. I will be presenting two basic types of images. Oblique vertical photographs, and in which I really just use the drone as a tripod in the sky, which I can move around and frame photographs. And photogrammetric images, in which I have combined 200 maybe photographs in a single image, an orthogrammetric image, or made a digital model of the surface, which can be manipulated to create various forms of visualization to highlight different features. This is a simple photograph of Llanbadden Church next to a river with fields in the background. I actually took this photograph by accident. I was photographing something else in a different direction, and I just turned the camera round to see what was there. The fields caught my eye, so I flew over it on a later occasion and compiled a number of photographic visualizations, of which this is one. It shows a lot more detail, geo-referenced, of course, as well as the fields. You've got some habitation platforms here, what may be a site of the original church, the Norman church is here. And interestingly, these banks seem a bit short. They seem as though they were originally intended to carry on. And it would be intriguing, definitely intriguing, if these, in fact, did at one time go beneath what is now the Norman church. Somewhat larger scale, this is Pennybont Common. This is about a total of 1 square mile, and I'm showing a composite image here of some 40 different scans, each of about 100 photographs. About 1/40th of the common is scheduled, this little area here. This is an archaeological drawing of that area. And you can clearly see cultivation ridges and strip fields and some platforms. My orthogrammetric view shows the field system extending beyond that area. This is the area which was in the previous slide, and you can see a lot more fields system beyond it. Further analysis showed this is the field system, jumps out at you. Some areas have been obscured by gorse. This image is a corner of the common, and you might just be able to see some cultivation and field boundaries down here. But when we turn on the photogrammetry, as it were, we really see them jump out. This is, next slide shows one of my favorite parts of the common, where we have strip fields leading down to a small stream. All this has never been properly mapped, apart from that small section I showed you earlier, and generally unrecognized, because in summary, a very large part of the common is covered by what appears to be medieval fields, apparently abandoned at a similar time, never to be developed further. Others amongst you are probably better placed to judge when and why this abandonment may have taken place. A change of scale to a small, well-defined, defended enclosure. In this single photograph, in the low angle sunlight, you can see the ridge and furrow in the background. Taking a metaphorical step back reveals a squarish structure, just here. This was discovered by aerial photography some years back. It is almost undetectable from ground level. When I surveyed it, I found that beneath the square structure, there was presumably an earlier ovoid structure, which had never been noted before. Now for something completely different on a larger scale. You'll recognize this, I'm sure, as Offa's Dyke. Here snaking, or perhaps more accurately, wiggling along a ridge. I want to use this image to point out an area down here. It's high visibility both from the eastern side, because of this valley, and across to the western side. It is a pinch point. Here is a photogrammetric view of the same section. And I want you to just focus on this area for a moment. In close-up, we see the converging roads, farm track road and the dike itself. And you may just be able to see a slight change here in coloration, made obvious by the very low-level sunlight, which casts sort of shadows. When I looked at this and analyzed this more carefully, I was really surprised to find that structure is actually beneath the dike, the black sections of the dike. So earlier than the dike, and I am not competent really to tell you what this earlier feature is, but it is very definitely there. It has been suggested to me that it is a Roman signal station. Its position is certainly consistent with that idea. Alternatively, it might be a feature associated with the construction of the dike. The fact that the drone photogrammetry has revealed a very subtle feature in an area investigated and walked over by generations of archaeologists is a tribute, I think, to the power of this tool. This visualization shows a different section of the dike and the quarrying marks on the eastern side, where the constructors dug out earth, stones to help construct the bank. I have now surveyed 16 miles, I should say only 16 miles of the dike, recording its present state and revealing some unrecorded features. This work, I hope, will stand as a reference for future management of erosion and change by man and nature. Earlier on, I mentioned Castlebank Hill Fort, one of many in my local area that I have surveyed. I have made a video of this, which you can find on my YouTube channel, describing it in detail. So I'll not go into further detail here. But it's a beautiful site, one of my favorite places. Then Degley Hill Fort has suffered greatly from quarrying, as you can see. I have surveyed it, but a simple vertical photograph shows what may well be the first phase of its construction, to which a second stage was added. The quarrying has unfortunately taken away any entrance features. A quick change of period. This is a Roman auxiliary fort, Castle Cochrane, an amazing and little visited site, sadly neglected. My photogrammetric survey here is somewhat marred by the trees. I think the technical term is buggered by trees. However, the grid of the original Roman buildings has been recorded by early generations of archaeologists. What they do not show are these diagonal ditches, the unfilled, sorry, the diagonal ditches, I forget to point, the unfilled excavation ditches of earlier excavations, and the walls left exposed to erosion and weather by erosion by sheep and weather. I'm told that some local workmen were given money to do the backfilling, but unsupervised, they preferred to spend it in the pub, a local tradition. In the undeveloped treeless uplands, I surveyed this Roman marching camp. Its outline is very clear here. And you can even see the entrances in each side, complete with the clavicula defensive spur. In this section, there seems to be some disagreement between the workmen, since it doesn't join seamlessly, but overlaps. Keeping to this Roman theme, parch marks. I can respond very quickly to parch marks in the area. I don't have to book a plane, but I am constrained because I can't see large numbers at the same time. I can't fly over many areas. This is of a Roman practice camp. It is close to a Roman fort, part of a much wider survey of the surrounding fort that I undertook. And you can see how it has been redug a number of times. Here are some more marching camps, in this case near Castle Coughlin and near the road going south from it. These are barely distinguishable at ground level, and I've had to exaggerate the elevations to bring them out in this photograph. I have photographed one other practice camp in this area. These four are all that remain of the 20 or so recorded in 1812. Abbey Camb was a Cistercian monastery. All that remains above ground are the jagged walls of the very long nave. In the 1820s, the site was beautified into a garden feature with loose fallen stones removed as building material and to create a road. The surrounding area was leveled. Just over 2 years ago, I was invited by the Abbey Camb Heritage Trust to join a community project to investigate the Abbey and its land holdings. I was presented with this plan as a summary of the knowledge of the site at that time. I surveyed the area, and here is an orthogrammetric view. The Abbey itself is just here, which covers most of the precinct. It's superimposed on a Bing map, and you can see the tree-covered slopes which surround it, which limited what I could photograph. However, I was able to use LiDAR to fill in the areas under the trees, albeit at a much lower resolution. Further analysis showed a significant level of detail. Too much to go into here. I want to mention two areas. This area here, where we hope to find some evidence of a transept, and here at the western end. We found no evidence for the transept, but we unexpectedly found evidence of a building, a rectangular building, presumably post-dissolution. This building goes under now a line of trees. At the western end, we have the precinct boundary and this structure, which we now interpret as being a Civil War bastion. In 1644, there were some 300 royalist troops garrisoned here. In December, an overwhelming number of parliamentary troops made a surprise attack and reduced what remained of the abbey after they had captured it, so that it could not be refortified. The Cistercians were famous for their sheep farming, so we are now looking at some of the farms once held by the abbey. This is a Valley End farm, a mile or so from it, from the abbey. And the abbey itself is just round the corner down this valley here. I have surveyed the whole of this farm, literally to the inch, as well as informing the general picture. That survey identified a number of previously unrecorded sites. Here, high in the sheep walk, we have this open-ended enclosure with an adjoining platform. In this area, we have an enclosure and the remains of a building. there's a stream here, and the vegetation is clearly engulfing this platform. Adjacent to these, we have a feature which was recognized first by the farmer when he cleared this area. He was mowing this area, and he came across this circular feature just nestled under one of the boundary banks. We really don't know what the function or the date of this circular structure was. It's intriguing. Rather chancing my arm, I suggested it might have been a cockpit held by the site for the local farmers. But local farmers didn't like that idea. On the edge of another very large sheep walk, just north of the Abbey, is this encroachment. However, its scale and planned layout are very different to the normal sort of encroachments that we find on commons in this area. It's an intriguing site, made more so by it being only some 300 meters from this valley, where we find a whole series of enclosures. We currently think that these will be used together as part, possibly as part of Cistercian developments. And I can't miss out to say that, of course, drones can be used to record archaeological excavations. I can fly at 2 meters above this on a grid to create a 2.5 or 3-dimensional view with a ground resolution of 1 millimeter or less than 1 millimeter. Well, I hope that I've shown enough here to demonstrate what is possible using modest consumer level equipment and readily available software. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julian. That's been a stunning collection of images there. And it's quite amazing. As someone who, a long time ago, did a couple of flights to trying to take aerial photos, the idea of having the ability to take enormous numbers of pictures in a wide range of conditions seems a great luxury, and certainly you've made the most of that. Well, that's a brilliant message to start with. Thank you very much, Julian. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our next paper now, which is, and we've got Scott Williams and Jacqui Mulville and from Cardiff University talking about the GCRF Phoenix Namibia project. So I'll hand over to Scott to present, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you. Just want to say thank you to everybody for attending this afternoon. Do appreciate it. And I'm just going to share my screen now. Okay, so yeah, this is the GCRF Phoenix Heritage Project that we are running in Namibia. And I'd like to give you a little bit of background on the project. The project was started by Jacqui, and I joined fairly soon after, and also Fionn Reynolds from CADU. And the Phoenix Heritage project sort of follows the model set by Phoenix Health, which is part of Cardiff University. And we were generously funded through the Global Research Challenges Research Fund. And it's allowed us to put together a project with teams of people in the UK and in Namibia. And the project was conceived really to provide a long-term solution to Namibia's heritage requirements. And this was really, the goal of this was to co-develop and co-refine existing UK best practice in heritage research and apply that to heritage management for use in Namibia. And we're doing this through working with our established partner institutions, which are the University of Namibia, UNAM, and the National Heritage Council, NHC. And there are a number of challenges with heritage in Namibia. Much of it goes unrealised and unrecorded. There are specific sites that are very well documented, they're very well protected, and they're very well visited, such as Twyfel-Fontein and Grosser Spitzkoppe. And these are rock art sites with quite a high degree of public focus. And there is a lot more to Namibian heritage than just rock art. And something that I personally had to get my head around when getting involved in this project is intangible heritage. So Namibia has a number of instances of intangible heritage, such as kind of folk festivals, and one of these is UNESCO Heritage Protected. And there are others, and they all need kind of documenting and recording. But the problem is a lot of these are kind of basically underreported. They are local to local regional groups and peoples, and so they are at risk. And so this poses a challenge. And what we're trying to do is to basically get as much information as we can from our colleagues in Namibia, and work out how to best record that information and to save that information. So we've approached this in a way where we've looked at the UK, we've looked at HERs, and we've talked to our colleagues in Namibia as to what their requirements are. And they currently have a fairly rudimentary HER that was constructed a number of years back, and it's no longer supported by the people who made it. The team at the NHC aren't really up to date on how it works. There are a number of features in it that don't work anymore. So, for example, it's very difficult to kind of extract images from the system. You certainly can't upload images to the system anymore. So there are a number of problems with it. And I think this really kind of comes about because heritage in Namibia, heritage management in Namibia is fairly recent. Only started in sort of 2005, the NHC. And so it's been a challenge for them to kind of get systems that work and that are future-proofed. So that's where we sort of wanted to take this, but also from their point of view, and I think just heritage in general, it's desirable really to engage people with the past, because then people become invested in heritage through those sort of tangible connections to ancestors and to what has gone on in their landscape previously. And this was certainly a requirement that was expressed through the Namibian Sustainable Development Goal, which was to cultivate good public administration. And also this is certainly something that is enshrined in the emerging Namibian National Heritage Council Sustainable Development Plan. So a goal of that plan was to preserve the heritage and history and to protect their traditional knowledge, develop their language, creative and cultural endeavours, and a series of aspirations to develop sustainable tourism. So they were looking to enhance their existing national inventories of heritage assets and to monitor and control damage and develop heritage-focused training. So to get what they needed, we were going to go out and visit the team. Unfortunately, this little thing called a global pandemic got in the way. And so we were due to go out in March 2020, but we were unable to. We were also due to go out in March 2021, but due to a lockdown, we were unable to. So fingers crossed for March 2022, hopefully we'll get out there. The idea was to visit and to kind of cement some relationships that we had with the teams in Namibia, to visit a number of sites, to get data whilst we were there on the ground, to see how our colleagues in Namibia record their data. But all of that had to change. So we continued to work together using digital collaborative methods. Zoom has become a big part of our kind of weekly life in meetings, and it's allowed us to have those face-to-face meetings, albeit virtually. And we've done a lot of work with our colleagues at UNAM and the NHC to understand how they view their heritage and how they'd like to manage their heritage. One of the things that we were very cognizant about was not sort of going in there into Namibia and saying, this is what you need, this is what you're going to have, this is what we're going to produce for you. So whilst we understand heritage in a certain way in the UK, obviously it's very Western centric, and there are a number of crossovers with how we view our heritage and how the Namibians view their heritage, but there are also a number of differences. And that was something that we had to get to grips with. So use of the word monument is frowned upon in Namibia because it has colonial connotations. And so where our HERs might have a monument index or a monument record, we've had to change all of that. We've had to adapt that for use in Namibia so that our colleagues in Namibia and the team in Namibia are comfortable with what we are producing. But also to kind of understand how they view their heritage and at what levels they view their heritage. It quickly became apparent that most heritage in Namibia is categorized at a national level. So there doesn't appear to be kind of a regional or a local level. And so that's something that we're very keen to explore, is how we can kind of get that granularity into their system, and how we can help them to take smaller sites that might not have that kind of national focus, but still are very important, and to record those sites. And so we looked at a number of systems. We looked at their existing system, and we came to the decision that the HEROS system, which has been widely used throughout the UK, certainly in Wales, South Gloucestershire Council use HEROS. We decided that we would get that system, that we would implement that system and use that as a replacement for their current system, which is called NARIS, which is the Namibian Heritage Resource Information System. So NARIS is the system I mentioned earlier. It's a good system, but it's just no longer supported. And so it's not fit for purpose as it currently stands. So we have been developing NARIS. We have a couple of great developers doing some work for us. We're developing the HEROS system, which will then become NARIS. And we are using IncGIS, which HEROS seamlessly integrates, so that we have a full scalable GIS system for use within the back end, and also for use within the front end, the public facing section, which we're having developed as well. We're having a website developed which will contain links into certain aspects of the HEROS HER. So members of the public can go in, they can gather data, and they can look at the HER in a similar way that we would in the UK with systems like Know Your Place and other HERs that are available. So this is just 2 examples. On the left, it's very sparse, there's only a few records in there. There is the system running in HEROS, and this currently contains the 200 data records that I was able to pull from the extant system. There are, as we understand, over 300 additional records which exist as physical paper copies. So these need to be digitally transcribed. So this is one of the challenges that we've encountered, in the complete heritage record in Namibia is not digital. However, this does provide us a very good opportunity to use those records for training for both UNAM students and for the NHC staff. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the map of Namibia, and there's a couple of points just here. And this is using the IncGIS to gather application data for permits. So if you want to undertake archaeological work, if you want to prospect for minerals, you have to apply to the National Heritage Council to do so. And currently they have a paper-based system, and none of this system is linked to any kind of GIS. So it's a particular problem at the moment in Namibia, where mining is very big, mining for minerals, mining for precious gems. It's a very big industry in Namibia. Permits can often be granted without knowing whether a granted site is maybe encroaching on a heritage site, or maybe impacts even the setting of a heritage site. So the use of this system, people are able to go in, they're able to just pinpoint data on the GIS and say, yeah, that's where the site that I want to look at is. They can even draw polygons onto the GIS to say, I want to specifically look at this area. And then you can fill out the application form online, and then that gets sent through to the relevant department, who can then look at it and assess it. All of that information is then stored in the HEROS HER in the background, and will then exist as data available for people to look at and to view. Obviously, there's that need for baseline standards. So in the UK, obviously, we're very much using the Heritage MIDAS, and also fish vocabularies in our HERs. And so through kind of collaboration with our colleagues at the NHC, we developed a list of metadata and data fields that they would want to be held within their HER. And we also created a classification record, an index for them using the fish vocabularies. But this goes back to that kind of not wanting to tell them what to do, and not wanting to tell them that this was the best way, because it might not be the best way for the team in Namibia. Had to be very cognizant about kind of decolonizing that HER as best as we could. And so we worked closely over a long period of time with our colleague Agnes Shiningyanwe in the NHC to develop a data classification list that suited their needs. So it uses the structure of Midas and fish, but it's also particularly tailored to the needs of the National Heritage Council. We're running project workshops each week, and they vary between the administrators being taught how to use and update the website. This is a screenshot of one of those workshops, and that's Rebecca who's running this. Rebecca's currently developing the website and the InkGIS system for that. And we're also running workshops, which we've got one upcoming next week, for all of the NHC staff to learn the HEROS system and to get to grips with the HER. And there'll be a number of those run over the coming months. And that also leads us on to training opportunities. A big part of this was understanding a way that we could use this system that we're creating, and how we could use that to train students at UNAM who are undoubtedly going to go on and become employees at the National Heritage Council. And so we are looking at massively open online courses. UNAM are very forward thinking in the way that they have already got an e-learning department, which was absolutely inundated with work throughout all the lockdowns through the pandemic. And they didn't miss a beat during their teaching at the university. They had absolutely no problems. They just shifted everything from face-to-face to online because they were already prepared for that. And so we are in discussion with their e-learning department about putting together courses which we can use to engage students and to teach them new skills and competencies. And so that's something that's going to go on over time. And, you know, with this funding, with future funding, it may be possible to then actually run modules within the university to specifically teach students about data management and HER. So I've got about 10 seconds left, so my clock tells me. So just like to thank all of those people on the page. And yeah, hopefully you'll see great things about this project soon. Thank you.
Thank you. That was great, Scott. Yes, a very interesting project you got there. One thing I was interested in was you mentioned about the fact it covers intangible heritage as well as if you like those sites or geographical things. from starting point, it would seem quite difficult to incorporate that in you've got different sorts of data, very different sorts of data about a tradition or a festival, as opposed to we would have about a site. So was there any sort of challenges in making that fit within the system?
That is a challenge that we've yet to yet to deal with. It is particularly difficult because these festivals move around. They don't always have. They're not kind of geographically tethered. So yeah, it is something that we need to kind of get to grips with. I think the UNESCO, I can't remember the name of the festival now, but the UNESCO festival that is protected always occurs in the north of the country. So with that one, we can kind of allocate it a geographical location. It'll be probably an exceptionally large polygon, but these are the kind of things that really need that kind of local input that go beyond what sort of myself, Fionn, or Jacqui can really bring to the project, because we don't understand the nuances of those festivals. We can categorize a festival. We can say it's a festival of music, or of dance, or food, etc., etc. But there's so much more to it than that. So the challenges really that face us are understanding what the intangible heritage is, understanding kind of how we give it a geographical location if it doesn't have that tether, and then understanding how we kind of track its change over time, because invariably these festivals do change, because they are sort of fairly organic and ongoing. They're not static. They're very much dynamic. But the reason to kind of really involve our colleagues in the NHC and in UNAM at the start, before we hand over this project, is for them to be able to kind of build that facility into it, so that it has that future proofing, so that they understand, they understand their heritage better than we do. They can help us shape the product that we give to them, and then hopefully it kind of is fit for purpose, and they can then, tackle these challenges head on as they come.
Yeah, because that's what's interesting. Because one thing I was going to ask you was, in terms of having looked at how you would approach almost like a year zero approach to recording heritage as a whole, are there any lessons that you would like to pick up for practice in the UK in terms of sort of what are there things that you've thought about which perhaps we might want to read back into practice here?
I don't know if Jacqui wants to weigh in on that.
Do you want me to say something?
Yeah, you go for it.
Jacqui?
I mean, it is fascinating, I have to say. I mean, some of the aspects you need to also understand. Well, I guess you've already got the idea. Namibia is a huge country. It only has 100 or so of records. I mean, I think in the grant application, I think I compared it with Glamorgan-Gwent or something, And I mean, Namibia has got an incredibly small record. It's their national heritage. It includes cultural as well as natural, as well as objects, and as well as tangible and intangible heritage. So in some respects, they've got a system, if you can look at it one way, it's better than ours, because what they've actually got is everything that they term to be heritage, and they don't see these kind of boundaries. So that, I think we can take some lessons about thinking of, I suppose, heritage as a kind of a seamless thing that isn't actually one aspect of anybody's world, because it comes in all these different shapes and sizes. And quite obviously, I mean, there's lots of sites there's kind of, there's sites of special scientific interest, as well as archaeological sites, as well as this and as well as that. So that's interesting. I mean, and also kind of having to involve living, breathing individuals and sort of living heritage, I think is something, I guess, that we still struggle with in many ways. And how do you incorporate intangible heritage? So is Glastonbury Festival part of our cultural heritage, because it's been going for 50 odd years and people do there and all these things happen there? So I mean, I do think there's a lot of lessons for us to stop, because I think we do have, I guess, a very formalized and a very structured, for a whole variety of good reasons, but it's a challenge to us to think outside that box. Yes, so from year zero, what would you do? And I mean, so the original system they had was actually built for them in South Africa, and actually followed on quite a lot from, I guess, sort of colonial British systems. So, I mean, I think we can learn lessons, and I think it's something about trying to move beyond bounded structural monumental heritage into something that's much more living and vibrant, but it's not easy.
Oh, okay, well, that's brilliant. Okay, well, thank you, Jacqui, and Scott for the presentation. That was brilliant. Okay, so we're going to stop for a break for 15 minutes, if everyone's okay, and so we convene at 3:10 with the remainder of the session. Okay, see you in a bit. Welcome back, everyone. I hope everyone is here. Right, okay, so in the rest of the session, we've got 3 more papers to come, so if we're ready, and I assume people are out there, we'll dive in. So I'd just like to introduce our next speaker is Dan Hunt from the Royal Commission on Ancient and Historical Monuments in Wales. It's got an even longer name than my university, which talking about the CHERISH project. So I'll hand over to you, Dan, if you're ready to go.
All right, so thanks, Martin. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name's Dan Hunt, and I'm the project investigator on the CHERISH project, which is quite an elaborate name, but it just means that I have sort of my finger in all the pies in terms of everything sort of archaeological investigation, which is quite a nice job to have. Yeah, so I'm just going to talk a bit about the CHERISH project and sort of innovation in the CHERISH project, I suppose, and coined the term cherishing our coastal heritage. So it's kind of two-pronged really in terms of sort of cherishifying it with our approach and sort of how we can look after it going forward and do it justice with the rich cultural heritage that's along our coastlines. So in terms of the project, so CHERISH is an acronym for Climate Heritage in the Reefs of Islands and Headlands, and we're a project focused on in the coastal zone and climate change, as the name suggests, and we work to sort of do all sorts of different types of work, survey work, investigative work, and I'll go on to describe that in a minute. But in terms of the sort of the composition of the project, we're made up of 4 key partners. So there's the Royal Commission, lead partner, so that's who I'm based with. Geological Survey in Ireland. So I should mention this is an Ireland-Wales project, EU funded project. So there's 2 partners in Wales, 2 in Ireland. So we have the Geological Survey who offer sort of marine survey capability, looking under the water and sort of surveying wrecks and submerged landscapes. Discovery programmes, they're kind of our counterparts over in Ireland in terms of the Royal Commission Discovery Programme. They're very much sort of a digital survey organisation who sort of very innovative in their approaches, and they've kind of helped us along in the Commission in terms of what we do. And then Aberystwyth University, who provide the paleo-environmental capacity for sort of investigating past landscapes and how they developed over time. So it's this very holistic approach in terms of what we kind of bring to the project, which is fantastic. But in terms of our aim, we have we have one aim that we have to deliver on, and this is it. It's quite simple, but very open-ended. So to raise awareness and understanding of the past, present, and near future impacts of climate change and on the rich coastal cultural heritage of our seas and coasts. So very broad, but it's left us with a nice big scope in terms of what we can achieve under that sort of broad aim. And I'll mention some of the techniques and ways of doing that and raising awareness and recording coastal heritage throughout the presentation. But in terms, so before deciding on how we were going to approach sort of employing and pushing forward the project, we really need to get an understanding of how our coastal heritage is currently being affected by climate change. And you can see here a nice illustration that we had created for us by a fantastic illustrator, Caris Tate, which nicely summarizes some of the key threats that our coastline is facing, especially our coastal heritage sites. So you can see it ranges all the way from sort of sea level rise, rising temperatures that are causing sort of terrestrial effects such as drying out the cliff faces, and also sort of the more sort of direct impacts from the sea in terms of sort of changing weather conditions and how sort of increased storminess and sea level rise directly affects coast heritage. But they all sort of compound each other in a way, and the coast is very much on the front line of the effects we see with the changing climate. It's one of the most exposed environments and probably one of the most tricky to work in. So we had to be quite creative and innovative in terms of how we approached it. And this is where this graphic comes in. So obviously the project is cross-border, but each partner brings something totally different to the equation. And this is the real strength of the project. And this diagram nicely summarizes, well, I think all of our techniques and how we're really throwing at the coastline to sort of investigate further knowledge of the cultural heritage itself, and the development of landscapes over time, from all the way from the end of the last ice age all the way into the present day, but also into sort of recording and monitoring the sites going forward into the future, how they're being affected, what's affecting them, and how much is being lost, and how they're being impacted for sort of management purposes going forward, if there's ways of mitigating the effects of climate change on these sites. Some of them there won't be, but sometimes there are. So this is sort of the work as a culmination of research and monitoring. And yeah, so they're all these techniques very complementary. So we use a lot of drone survey, but also more traditional techniques, excavation, earthwork surveys, geophysics. They all come together into a kind of a joint way of combating this issue. So just to sort of give a flavour of how the techniques, or some of the techniques, come together. I'm going to take you down into Pembrokeshire to start off with, and one of the key site types that we've been researching on CHERISH are the promontory forts. I mean, they're on the front line, they're right on the coast there, and there's evidence that they have been heavily eroded over the past, and sort of how we can gauge how people's perception of those places have changed as well. There is a good repository for that kind of knowledge where we can really delve into from a multidisciplinary point of view. So we're going to just focus on two sites, which are they're a nice pair of sites to look at, because they're kind of intervisible with each other. They're not too far, and we've done a lot of work there. So we have Camp and Porthoral, which are in North Pembrokeshire, just not far away from St David's, just to the southeast there. But they are two very different types of promontory fort. There's a real issue of the term promontory fort, because it's very well, there's over 50 of these sites in the county, but they're all special in their own way. I mean, it's similar to hill forts, isn't it, where they're not all the same, but they're sort of termed the same. So we started trying to sort of open that illusion. So as Julian nicely introduced at the start of the talk, we quite heavily rely on drones, and this is kind of stuff he was talking about. We do photogrammetric survey of all of our coastal sites, or archaeological sites anyway, for monitoring purposes primarily. So we have that baseline data captured, but also for archaeological prospection. And you can see here we've got the earthworks nicely recorded here. But we're also able to produce 3D models for outreach purposes. So this is a Sketchfab model here, and people are able to go on there and navigate around to the heart's content. We provide a bit of information based on our research. Yeah, that's one of the products we can produce. But sort of moving from the drone survey, which is very much sort of an objective way of looking at at a site, we've gone down and done more sort of traditional earthwork surveys, and these sites haven't benefited from any kind of survey before, and which is specifically sort of strange for Porphyrow, because that's seen several seasons of excavation. So they've gone in there and excavated it before they've fully understood what's even on the surface. So we sort of went in there to try and rectify that, and the story we got from that is sort of obviously multi-phased defences. But prior to doing this work, the reason we were here in the first place is because these two sites, from a very superficial point of view, they appear to have lost huge amounts of their interior to erosion. And obviously, since people previously thought this was sort of immediately after or in the years after the abandonment between the modern day. But what this work has actually sort of uncovered is the fact that it was likely that people originally came here because of the erosion. They built their defences to respect the erosion. So this whole idea that these sites are eroded completely out, or the interiors have been lost, has kind of been burst open, really. So our kind of understanding of these sites have changed just by applying these kind of what could be deemed as traditional techniques, but innovative in the way that they come together. And we're able to start sort of rewriting the narrative of these sites, and we can start projecting this onto other sites around the county now. And then building on that again, we were able to CHERISH were able to fund a really great excavation this summer in September this year. So it's still quite fresh, and able to go and look beneath the surface. Also prompted thoughts on not a very well researched site. And there not very many have been excavated. I mean, Porphyrow's one of the 2 or 3 that had previously been excavated. So this was a unique opportunity to delve down and have a look beneath the surface and see what's really there. I suppose one of the good things about being a climate change project is that we're threat led, and it means it opens up avenues of where we're able to access and what we're able to do. So usually, if you wanted to do an excavation on a scheduled monument such as this, it would be extremely difficult. But because we're able to prove that these sites are at risk from coastal erosion, and actually from vegetation erosion and burrowing as well, in regards to the ramparts to the west side here, we're able to get in there and start doing some nice work. So the excavation was formed of 2 trenches. So we have trench 1, which is obviously was positioned to evaluate if there was anything there, because we'd done a geophysical survey before, but the igneous nature of the headland kind of disrupted it. But we were able to see a few possible anomalies in there, which was good. So we stuck a trench over there, right behind where the erosion is also occurring. So that was directly related to the possible threat there. And a small little one over the ramparts to try and get some possible sort of phasing of the construction there. But we're only able to excavate there because CADU was interested, or they are interested in the erosion caused by the vegetation and burrowing. So we're able to get a nice couple of trenches there, that's trench 2, sorry, to start seeing what's actually there. And we came up with some lovely stuff, as you can see here. There's another use of drones. You can get perfect, nice vertical images, as Julian showed earlier. But we pulled out, so we identified some interesting features out, possible trackways coming in through the entrance, walls, post holes. But obviously in such a small area, we're unable to kind of resolve exactly what we're finding. We just know we found some great stuff to go back to in later years. And I think Dig Ventures, who we tasked to run the site for us, will be sort of crowdfunding going forward to open up a much wider area, because now it's known that there's really nice stuff there that can really further the story of the site. But in terms of the overall aim of raising the profile of climate change, this was a real success in terms of for a community project. And Dig Ventures are very good at doing this. So we had over upwards of 150 volunteers over sort of a 2-week, 3-week period coming onto the site, getting their hands on the archaeology and also understanding or sort of getting to grips with why they were there and why it was important that they were doing the work they were doing. And it was really a successful few weeks. And we got some nice rare, possibly Iron Age pottery, which is also extremely rare for Wales, and even rarer for this type of site. And then obviously through that excavation, we're able to bring it in line with previous work. So this is the stuff at Porphyrow that had been excavated. But although there's evidence of the site eroding and some of the roundhouses there have eroded, most of the stuff was built to respect the defences in terms of it's built buried stuff as well as the surface evidence. So it's pushing this this new narrative that we're sort of building through our work there. I know I'm running short on time, so I'll try and wrap this up now. But so another really great thing about the CHERISH project is how we're able to sort of mobilise the resources of the university and how they can use their paleo-environmental expertise to further our knowledge of landscapes. So culture heritage isn't just about sort of castles and promontory forts; it's about the landscapes that people existed in. And one of the good examples from the project so far is Locock in Anglesey, which is now a freshwater lake. But over time, it's seen a lot of development in terms of sort of inundation by the sea, then returning to freshwater lake. So the guys at the uni are able to sort of extract cores from the lake and from the dunes, and study the sort of diatomine pollen within the cores, and they actually started to uncover the fact that the freshwater lake was originally formed. It was formed as a freshwater lake at the end of the Ice Age, but sort of 7,000 years ago, it suddenly changed. It was inundated by the sea level rise. There was loss of the dunes, destruction of the woodlands that was protecting the lake there, and it became more, and it ceased to be a lake anymore. So these cores highlight that. But along with the cores, we're able to use geophysical survey, so ground penetrating radar on the dune system to start sort of uncovering the different layers and how this record ties in with the paleo-environmental record. So we're able to start building the story of how the lake changed over time and how the landscape people existed and changed over time as well, which is interesting. And then finally, one of the other arms of the project is the marine survey capability. So this is where GSI come in. They're able to provide us with this small fleet of ships, which can do all sorts of fancy underwater survey, such as bathymetry, echo sounders, and all that sort of. It's way beyond my knowledge, but it's all great stuff. And through doing that, they're able to survey the seabed and identify new shipwrecks, and then it also provides targets for more sort of hands-on investigation. So also in September, we're able to bring in MSDS Marine, who I know hosted a few sessions earlier on in the week. And they've done a fantastic week of survey on the Bronze Bell wreck, which is just off up in the Clean Peninsula area, which is able to build on previous work done in 2006, build a much more accurate record, and also provide further data on how climate or possible climate change has affected the wreck, sort of the change in species occupying the wrecks, their great sort of ecological habitats for different types of species. And then also bring in some of the more local history as well. You can see here we're able to put together these dive diaries, and they're on the website for you to go and have a look at if you like, and asking people about their previous experience of the wreck, as well as how they went about the dive, what they were doing, and why they were there. So it's all great stuff accessible on the website there if you want to have a look. So yeah, that was a really rapid run through of the project, but I hope it kind of covered the bases. So yeah, if you want to check out our website, we have Facebook and Twitter as well, all quite active. So yeah, diolch and thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan. Thanks. That's brilliant. Yes, it's obviously. I mean, it's a massive territory to play with, and sort of the entire coastline, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I hadn't really thought about it before, but what you were saying about the promontory forts is, of course, that's a class of monument that we risk losing all of the examples of by definition, because they're all, they're all to some extent in that danger zone. Because I think one of the things that you picked up on that is that question about sort of designation and scheduling and so on, and how that works on an unstable resource. That the assumption normally is if you're safe on dry land, if you schedule it, it's safe. But that's that. We might have to rethink that and think about, well, who is benefiting from us designating resources which we know are going to be eroded. But yes,
yeah, definitely. I mean, I've always had a slight problem with scheduling, because it's great to protect something, but if you don't actually know much about it, then what is it contributing to society, basically? But yeah, in the coastal zone, there's definitely a change of attitude from CADU and the sort of the landowners and stuff, and National Trust and people who own and sort of protect heritage on the coast. And yeah, that, like you say, they started to realise that it's falling into the sea, and if it goes, then although it's been scheduled all that time, we don't know anything about it, and it's not recorded. So very interesting. Yeah.
I think you mentioned at the start, sort of the plan is to think about, well, what obviously as a it's a short-term project, but you've raised the long-term question about, well, what do we do about sort of managing heritage at risk into the future? And have you got any sort of thoughts about where that might be going? Is it sort of bulking up CADU's inputs, or what?
Yeah, I mean, I think the general approach probably will be, I mean, you're not going to be able to defend or protect these sites because they're going to be very, very low down on government, agenda and things. So what the approach that we've been doing on Cherish is probably the way to do it, really. Just have to record and research before they are lost, and then it's preservation by record, isn't it, really? Because you're not going to be able to, or there's not going to be the means of protecting some of these sites, especially when you have urban settlements which are settlements which are facing bigger problems. So yeah, I mean, this is one of the outcomes of Cherish, I think, is to try and provide guidance and push this approach that these sites need researching, really, before they're gone.
Right. Okay. Well, brilliant, Dan. Thank you very much. Cheers. I should just say, before we move on to Sean, as the next talk, I do encourage everybody, if you do want to ask any questions, do put them in the chat box. I feel a bit guilty that I'm the only person who's asking questions here, and that's not on purpose. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our next talk about the volunteer project to accession from ARCAHMW, and that's Sean Darby from the Gwynedd Archaeological Trust.
All right, excellent. Hi, everyone. So I'm Sean. I'm the Historic Environment Record Archaeologist at Gwynedd Archaeological Trust. Today, I'm going to be talking a little bit about a remote volunteering project that we've been running for just over a year now. I think it's about a year and 3 or 4 months. I've lost track of time, called Accessioning ArchaeHMW. But before I do that, just to quickly say who Gwynedd Archaeological Trust, or GAT, are. We are one of 4 archaeological trusts in Wales. Each trust covers a specific area of Wales. So we cover Gwynedd, the western half of Conwy, and Anglesey up Ynys Môn. The trust was formed in 1974 as an educational charity, and today it offers a wide range of archaeological services and has an in-depth local knowledge about the archaeology and historic landscapes of Northwest Wales. The trust can really be divided into 3 sections. So you have the commercial services, you have Gwynedd Archaeological Planning Service, and you have the heritage management, which the Historic Environment Record falls under. Speaking of the HER, just to give you a very brief overview of what our HER looks like, we use HEROS, It's a dynamic online relational database with integrated GIS / digital mapping that's been collected from a variety of sources over the last 47 years. So we've now hit the 50,000 record mark, yay. So that includes core records such as sites, features, and also events like watching briefs, excavations, etc. It's statutory on the Trust to make the data available on behalf of the Welsh ministers. Everybody can search the Historic Environment Record online via Archaeology, which houses all data for Wales. Basically, if you accept the terms and conditions, click on the map, you'll be greeted by a mapper where you can click on little red spots, each spot being a site, and then you'll be greeted with a record that looks something like this, which has some primary information, descriptions, and sources, often with linked reports as well. So, in terms of the actual project itself then, well, this was an idea that we had. We had a collaboration in GAT really between the Historic Environment Record, between myself and the senior HR archaeologist and our outreach officer, to think of a remote volunteering project that we could put up in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The idea really was that it would maintain public engagement throughout lockdown and beyond. And what we really thought we could do is something that could help to enhance the Historic Environment Record. So a sort of record enhancement task, really. We decided to go with the Archaeology Cambrensis journals, and they're a really good format, really, to read through. We thought volunteers would find them quite good to read through, and they're also, most importantly, readily available digitally through both the National Library of Wales and the Archaeological Data Service. The National Library of Wales has them in full from 1846 to 1999. And then ADS has them from 2000 through to, I think, 2017 at the moment. So the idea was that participating volunteers would be assigned a specific journal. They'd look through this to find new information for the HCR. They'd then compile this into a document that they could return to us, and then we could put that information into the HCR. So when it came to setting up the project, we came together and thought we needed some guidance material, really. We wanted it so that volunteers would know what they were doing and wouldn't have to come back to us with too many questions. So we tried to lay it out as best as possible. We needed this to be bilingual, but we also wanted it to not be project specific. So we didn't want it to just be for the ArchCam project. We wanted to be able to use it maybe in the future if we were to run a similar project. So we came up with a few different documents that we needed. So one was an introductory document. This was tailored just for the ArchCam project and basically just gave an overview of what the volunteers would be doing. Then we came up with a flowchart. So the flowchart sort of showed the stages that volunteers would work through the journal to find sites and give them an idea of the process. Then we had a finding grid references user guide and a guide to using HCR controlled terminology. These two were really useful for if a volunteer had found a new site and they needed to get a grid reference, or they needed to enter controlled terms such as site type, period, condition, and evidence, that sort of thing. We also came up with some guidance on using Archaeology. This is also actually proved, on a side note, really useful for if we get inquiries just in general about Archaeology, because we can give out this guidance. But that just sort of goes through how to use Archaeology and the best ways to search using it. And finally, guidance on using a recording spreadsheet that we would give the volunteers to complete. So this is the flowchart. I know it's probably a bit small on your screens, but I'm just going to go through it quickly. So again, this is not specific to the ArchCam. This could be used for any journal or any piece of literature. But firstly, have you identified information suitable for the HCR? So in this case, a volunteer would be checking an ArchCam volume. If they found a site, where is the site? So we can only record information in Northwest Wales. So they might have to use the grid reference user guide or Archaeology to try and find the site. Once they know its location, does the site fall within our area? If it doesn't fall within our area, then unfortunately we can't record it and they'll have to go back to the journal and keep searching. But if it does fall within our boundary, then we can record it, and then they've got to check if the site already exists. So this is when they'd go to Archaeology, they'd try and find its location, and they'd see if the site did actually appear there. If the site does appear there, then they can probably add additional supporting information. This might be a reference to the ArchCam journal, because it might not be referenced, or it might be descriptive information in the journal that isn't already present. If it's the case that everything's already there that needs to be there, then that's fine. They can just move on to looking for another site. If they can't find the site in Archwilio, then it's potentially a new site. So they'll add it to a different spreadsheet so we can create a new site record in the HCR. So this is what the recording spreadsheet looked like. We did it in Excel for the most part, because this makes it, well, it's the easiest option really for reading the information back into the HCR afterwards. But we did also offer it in Word as well to volunteers who maybe weren't comfortable using Excel. So we had two different spreadsheets really. We had one for existing sites, so information for the PRN, description, reference, page number, the name of the volunteer and the date that they did it. And then you can see that the second spreadsheet is a little bit more detailed because we need a bit more information if we're creating a new site. We tried to still not put too many fields in this because we didn't want to overwhelm volunteers, and a lot of the fields, because we sort of knew where the information was coming from, we could auto populate afterwards. So we tried to keep it, as simple as possible. But the importance of having the volunteer's name and the date they put the information in was really useful for us. One, it was nice for the volunteer to actually see that their information had got into the HCR and they'd be referenced there. And secondly, it meant we could track any changes that had been made and where they had come from. Can you tell I like flowcharts? Because here is another one. What we sort of had to do was we had to think who was going to sort of manage the volunteers on a day-to-day basis. And that turned out to be me. Because I work with the HCR every day, it seemed the most logical option because the volunteers were probably going to be having questions about if this site is the same as this site mentioned in a journal and so on. And it cut out the middleman by having them not have to go through our outreach officer to get to me. So this flowchart just sort of shows the process of dealing with volunteers on a daily basis, really. So to begin with, when a volunteer expressed interest in the project, they'd be emailed the introductory document, and then they'd confirm they're happy that they want to carry on, and then they'd be emailed the remaining guidance material. And we sort of staggered it like this really so that they didn't get overwhelmed by too many documents all in one go, because with about 7 different documents coming at you in an email, it might be a little bit too much to process all in one take. Once they'd confirmed they'd read that, they'd be sent a link to a specific ArchCAHMW volume and asked to track the number of hours they spent on it, and then troubleshoot any problems the volunteers had. At the start of the project, and when volunteers were getting to grips with things, there were quite a few problems, quite a few questions and things like that. But as the project's gone on and developed, I don't get any anymore. Then once the volunteers had completed the spreadsheet, they'd return it to me and I would check the formatting and details of it. Again, at the start, I had to do this, quite frequently to check it was all okay. But as it's gone on and on, don't need to do that anymore. Then I'd ask, would they like another volume? If they wouldn't like another volume, then they'd leave the project and another volunteer would be chosen from a waiting list that we had, and it goes round. If they would like another volume, there was no limit on the amount they could be assigned, so I'd happily assign them another volume and it goes round again. In terms of volunteer management, we needed a way of sort of keeping track of the volunteers, knowing which journal they were working on and when. So we came up with a very sort of simple access database really to track the volunteer and also to link any journals that they were working on to that. This was useful for our statistics, but it was also useful so that we didn't accidentally duplicate handing out the same journal to 2 different people. So before we put out the call for volunteers, we did test all the guidance on one of our long-standing volunteers at GAT just to iron out any kinks and make sure it was going to work okay. And then our outreach archaeologist put a call out through our mailing list, through our various social media channels, and also just through general correspondence as well. If somebody got in touch with a HCR inquiry and it sounded like maybe this would be their kind of thing, I'd sort of, offer it. And we had an overwhelming response for it, really. We had to limit it to 25 volunteers because we thought at the beginning this was probably the maximum that I could handle while still being able to do all my normal work as well. But as the project's gone on, we've seen that volunteers, can get on with the project, and we've been able to expand this to around 30 volunteers really. But we did have a waiting list in place on a first come first served basis. So when somebody left the project, we could get somebody else in. This gives you a very brief example of somebody who's reading through the National Library of Wales, a journal, and they've entered the information into a spreadsheet. So you can see they found information on a cromlech at Glenogfawr, and they've found the PRN in Archwilio. They've found some new descriptive information. They've put in the reference, the specific page number, and then their details. And then this is the back end. So this is what the HR looks like internally. And you can see the information's been added to the description field and to the bibliography table. You can actually see that this site has now been identified as a natural feature. So that's nice as well, because it sort of shows a progression from how somebody in the 19th century thought it was one thing and how now it turns out to be a natural feature. And then this in turn goes through to Archwilio and appears, publicly for everybody to see. And rather than read all these through manually, so having to go through every single spreadsheet and copy and paste, we SQL the information in, so a bit of field mapping from the Excel spreadsheet through to the relevant fields in the HR, just to speed up the whole process really. And we're still in the process of doing that now for the final ones. Over the course of the project, we did various promotion. Our outreach officer got people to take selfies of themselves working, which worked really well. And then we put them up on our various social media channels. And we've also tried to post for the milestones of the project as well. So for example, when a year of the project had gone by. And we'll be putting another one out once all the journal volumes have been returned. So what are the results of the project so far? Well, it's still ongoing, which I think is a surprise to everyone really, after a year and 4 months, but we've still got people working on it. We've had about 38 volunteers who have participated in the project overall, and all journals have now been assigned out between 1846 and 2017. We've got 5 volumes left to return that we're eagerly awaiting from our volunteers. This has led to the discovery of probably around 25 new sites. I haven't had a chance yet to go through the new sites and add them in, but they seem to consist of mainly find spots for the odd finds, and occasionally an actual new site as well. So that's quite interesting, really. I'm looking forward to looking into that in a bit more detail. And then we've had about 1,405 updates for existing sites. So that'll be adding in descriptive information and adding in ArchCAHMW references, which weren't present before, which is going to be really useful in the HR, really, if you think about it, just having that other avenue to look in the ArchCAHMW journals now and to know that a site is referenced there. And this is all accumulated in about 851 volunteer hours in total. So this is some of the feedback we've had. I'm not going to read through this, but you can sort of see it here. This is informal feedback. But we have now put out a SurveyMonkey just to get a bit more formal feedback from people. If we want to run a project like this again, it's useful to have, to learn where we can improve on for next time, really. But no, we've had some really positive feedback from the project, which has been really great. So in terms of the successes of the project, we've successfully enhanced the historic environment record, saw the number of edits that have been made. We've provided a project with a wider reach and a different scope to our usual outreach events, which tend to focus mainly on fieldwork, really. Although we do offer some HR volunteer programs, it's not as wide and broad as this one's been. We've successfully continued engagement throughout the pandemic, and it's really highlighted the success of volunteers and volunteer projects and what they can achieve. It's also been a positive collaboration within GATS itself, so strength of team between the historic environment record and our outreach. And it's been a good learning experience for us as well, learning how to run a remote volunteering project like this. So we've learned how to run such a project, but we've also learned the importance of clear guidance material and templates. There are things going forward, if we were to do this again, that I would change to the templates to make it easier to get the information back into the HR that we didn't know at the time. So this is really useful. And it's also shown how successful a remote volunteering project can be, because we wouldn't have been able to run a project like this from the office. We wouldn't have been able to have 25 plus volunteers in the office at any one time. It just wouldn't have worked. So really, remote volunteering is the only way this could have been done. And finally, it's given us a lesson in the importance of the ability to adapt, which I think the COVID-19 pandemic's done for a lot of people, really, is being able to adapt to the situation. But finally, I'd just like to say a really big thank you to all our amazing volunteers who've taken part in the project. If anybody wants any further information, they can always email me at hr@hnev.co.uk. But of course, questions now.
Great, brilliant, Sean. Thank you. That's a very interesting body of work. I was especially excited to see you doing this because I worked at the National Library of Wales a few years ago on the digitisation project.
Yes.
That's dealt with exactly the ArcCAHMWs, and I must admit, one of the the questions you always have with particularly with the 19th century material is that as your example of the cromlech there is that it's interesting to know what people said, but you really don't want to rely on it as being as being a valid thing. And but if you can't access the data, you're always left, well, is it? I mean, if so it's really really good that you made use of that. So that's brilliant. So in terms of the process that I mean, I think it's interesting there that the balance there between updating existing records and finding new sites, was that broadly the pattern you expected? Were you expecting to get a lot more new sites, brand new sites that you'd never heard of before?
I think we were thinking we'd probably get more updates if the HR is doing its job properly. So you were pleased then that it was that you're yes, yeah,
you're making, because I think that it's very clear from the example records you showed there that the with the HER record showing, well, obviously a current interpretation, if you like, as but also the various things that have been said over time. So it's a slightly different thing, isn't it? It's one thing to say this is what we currently think, but it's another thing to say and this is what other people have said in the past, because that may be
exactly.
quite useful. Yeah, well, that's brilliant. So are there any sort of other sort of long journal sets that you've got your eyes on in terms of what
we are looking into the possibility at the moment. I think it has highlighted like the importance of digitizing journals in general, really. Because when you're looking to try and find other ones that volunteers could access, there aren't really that many Wales specific ones that are there in full. So it's definitely something that would be good to look into getting more of done.
Yeah, as you say, because it has just transformed things, being able to sort of type a word into all of ArcCAHMW and say, oh, there we are.
Yes,
as opposed to, especially the early ones, because I'm not sure if Edith's still here, but I know she spent a lot of time trying to sort out the volume numbering of the series.
Yes,
in the 19th century, because the ArcCAHMW had this habit of starting a new series with a new volume numbering, every 10 years or so.
Yes,
so it's a bibliographic nightmare. Right. Brilliant. Okay, well, thank you very much, Sean. That's very interesting. Okay, so Edith says she'd forgotten about that. Well, I hadn't, because when we were digitizing it, we had to look at that question all over again, and we ended up with a bodge that worked rather than a bibliographic pure solution. That's for another time. Okay, thank you very much, Sean. Okay, so our final paper today is from Sophie Lewis-Jones from the Glamorgan-Gwent Archaeological Trust, talking about recording using volunteer recording using tablets, I believe is where we're heading.
Okay, great. So hello, my name is Sophie Lewis-Jones, and I got married 5 years ago. I still forget the Jones part. We've been carrying out, I work for the Glamorgan-Gwent Archaeological Trust, and I've been carrying out trying to carry out a digital recording system. Just to sort of let you know, this is in very early stages. It's been sort of semi-tested, but we are yet still to fully test it, but I'll explain that as we go along. So as I said, we wanted to create a digital recording system, and this was something that was not only going to be able to be used by the commercial side, but also by the community. So community groups could take this and use it on their own excavations or projects, obviously with our support, but it's something that we wanted to be very sort of user-friendly, but also has exactly what we need in terms of digital recording systems. We wanted to be able to think of different ways, and we researched different ways in which we could carry this out. we came across a number of different ways. So we were thinking, do we use Excel and Access, which at the time, you know, when these were sort of first used, these were great and fantastic ways of doing it. But over time, Access and Excel, even though it's still widely used today, it's not hugely sort of user-friendly. And so we thought, okay, we'll have a look at that and see if there's another way in which we can look into inputting data, but then also exporting data. So we needed to create a user-friendly system that would allow, like I said, both community groups and could be used commercially. So why are we going digital? Essentially, comes with a number of benefits. Obviously, largely quicker data collection, extraction, interrogation for both aspects. Reduces archiving, which if we're, you know, in terms of if everything can be done digitally, it then requires less paper, so it's environmentally friendly. Also, we wanted, with the volunteers, we wanted them to be able to be independent. So if they, like I sort of mentioned at the start, if they had a project that they've been working on, they could borrow this system and borrow the tablets, which I'll show you later, and then they could take this away with some, you know, training from us, and always have, you know, the constant support back and forth. They could then take this and work on them and do any recording that they need to. Also this way, obviously when they return the tablets, we are then able to get more data from local groups. So we're being more inclusive and a bit more of a conversation between us and groups and getting that information back and the data that they have back. So we were looking, as we were looking into it, we thought, okay, there's, you know, a couple of ways we could do this. As has been mentioned already, HEROS was one of the ways that we thought, okay, you know, this might work. We also were looking at, as I said, Access, Excel, Word. And then we also we were thinking, oh, should we have a look at current market apps and software? So there were lots of different ways we could go, and I'll show you the sort of different ways in which we had a look. So HEROS template, as you know, like I said, as mentioned before, it's a great product. And we were looking at, and this is sort of a mock-up that I tried to create to see how it would look. And it's fantastic, and it would have everything we need, and it's then also we're able then to put that straight onto the HER, which is fantastic and really helps contribute in, you know, in the sort of greater understanding aspect. The only issue with HEROS in terms of outside in the field recording is that it's not hugely user friendly in what we needed. Back, you know, sort of at a computer on a desktop, fantastic, but not so great in terms of being out in the field. So the other way we thought was okay, well, let's look at see what software we already have. So we have, you know, Access, Excel. We're thinking, okay, let's have a think about this way that we could go down this way. A lot of people have Access and Excel. A lot of people have Words. We were trying to go down that avenue. I created a couple of tables, and I was trying to link them together, which is great. However, we're thinking, okay, well, if we're going to take this out into site, how are we going to be able to work that way? And so we're thinking, okay, let's have a look at SharePoint, which was another option. However, Access and Excel isn't available as a sort of a mobile app. And so we were like, okay, Access is out. Let's have a look at Excel. And again, Excel as a data collecting point is brilliant. However, we needed it to be a little bit more user friendly. Also, if there were issues with connection to the internet, we were like, well, we can't now save this and store this. So we were thinking, okay, maybe also we were trying to sort of update a little bit from using sort of Microsoft software. So we thought, okay, let's have a look a little bit further. there are lots of different current market apps and softwares. ArchaeoPad, which was is a brilliant archaeological based app. Or there's things like Tapform, which is also a fantastic data collection point. With Tapform, for example, it's only really available on iPads and iPhones. So we were like, that is limiting us in what we can do. So we were like, let's keep having a look around. And then we thought, okay, let's have a look at tablets and the cost involved in this. Unfortunately, as we all know in archaeology, cost is fairly high in terms of what we're limited to and what we can do. So we were having a look at this and we were thinking, okay, iPads, they are great, but they are slightly more expensive. So maybe we'll go down the Samsung route. We also were thinking, okay, outdoors, wind and wet. Unfortunately, in Wales in particular, it's likely to be raining somewhere. So we thought, okay, we're gonna have to get, covers and stylus pens, portable battery chargers as well, Sims, stylus. So we were thinking, there's quite a lot that, to think about. So we think, okay, so what are we getting to here? So we're thinking, lots of different ways in which we can look at things. There's SharePoint, Excel, ArchaeoPad. There's so many different avenues that we could go down. And then in the end, we actually come up and it looks like it's going to be very, very promising, which would be Ninox. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with Ninox or has used it or anything like that. So we thought, okay, let's have a look at this in a bit more detail. So if I just out of that, this is what we have so far. This is the Ninox system. It's fantastic. I think it's incredibly user-friendly. Obviously, you can see I created this on the desktop. However, you can create tables. You can create exactly how you need it to look based from if you're on site. You think, oh God, I forgot to create that before I left. Okay, you can just do it there and then. So I've created a number of, I'm sure you can see, not quite our actual sites, but I thought, okay, let's have a look. And so I've created sort of what it could look like on site. So go on site, okay, we go, okay, great, I'm on excavation number 1 in the South Pole. Not sure if I'd want to be on excavation number 1 in the South Pole, but, and then this is what that looks like inside. So we have all the usual paper records that we use on an archaeological site. So we have contact records, indexes, sample records, lots of different ways in which we capture data. So we wanted it to look as similar to paper records as we can, just to make it easy, simple, and also quick in terms of the, sort of moving from paper to a digital recording system. So if I click here, you can see this is what it looks like in terms of how it would look on the tablet. So you go through and you can just add all your information straight away. We wanted it to be quick and easy, so created tick boxes for certain things, drop downs for other ones, because again, we wanted it to be really, sort of integrated, like, okay, who's recorded it? Oh, let's say it's Lorraine Warren, for example. And also you've got things like dates as well, just makes it so much we think, oh, I want to take a couple of, or as we all know, data collection like this really does add up time on site. One of the best things about it as well is that you can automatically just click image and it'll open up the camera automatically on the tablet. You can take a photo and it's connected then to this record. Getting off site, and if you're on an excavation for say 6 months and you've got all of that data, then you need to take back and you have to digitize and you have to try and link together. It can be quite daunting on occasion. So being able to link a image of a feature to the main record was something we really wanted. And we were also able to do things like sketches. Forgive my terrible drawing. I failed art. you'll have to forgive me on my drawings, but you know, it's just little things like that where we can take the pen, just do a quick sketch, add a couple of handwritten notes if we wanted to. It's really quick and easy and so simple to do as well, or at least I think, but maybe I'm just because I've been in this for so long. For example, another thing as well I wanted to do was to make, say, levels sort of quicker, so we can do it now. So we automatically type in drawing number, level, backside, for example, and the intermediate, and it would automatically work out our reduced levels for us. I created a formula to enable that to happen, which again might save, if you've got like 2 levels, might save you about 30 seconds. If you've got about 100, will save you a lot more time, and potential tears over a calculator going funny. Another example I wanted to show was, if I take you to excavation, for example, we were thinking, okay, let's have a look at other ways in which we can make it a lot easier and user friendly. Again, going through, we're thinking, okay, the skeleton record, great. If you wanted, there's a button then you can click and it will automatically link you to sort of like this is a very, very simple skeletal reference, as you can see, but it's something that we're working on, and we're thinking, okay, so now we can connect things and little reminders and sheets like that. Another something that I'll show you in a second is we wanted to show how linked everything could be. So you can see the ways in which the different forms are linked and connected. So if you're typing out your context record, there's a button you click in and it'll then add up and sort of link then to specific parts of the context index or the photographic index. That was again something that we wanted to be able to do. And now it's useful. We can print that straight away, print that out as a sheet, and it has all of that. So it looks essentially like a context record form. However, we are trying to work, sort of step away from having to print this in paper, but it's there as an option if ever we needed it in terms of that. It's also very simple in terms of data extraction. We can then simply take say if we wanted the records, we can then import and export the data very, very simply. It's very quick. And by doing that, it comes out as either CSVs or Excel spreadsheet tables, which we can then extract that, save it back in our, our main folders. And Excel then is a way in which can be then uploaded straight away into the HER with limited data manipulation. So we thought, we were looking at it, we're like, this actually looks like a really good way of doing this. If I just, so this is something how it would look like on a tablet. So again, very similar, really user friendly, very quick. And the beauty of Ninox is you can manipulate it to look exactly how you want to. I tried my best to sort of copy our context sheet format and layout, again, make it easier as much as we can. But I particularly like the drop downs, just things like that. I think they could save a lot of time, and particularly if we're handing out to community groups that might not have a huge amount of experience in terms of either tablets themselves or just using programs like these. We wanted something that was really user friendly and with limited support and sort of initial training, then they could take this and sort of run with it. And I'll quickly then take back to this. I just wanted to, I have tested it on mobile phone because it's available as a mobile phone app as well. And on the mobile phone, this is the kind of format and the way it looks, and the layouts. You've still got, like I said, the drop down and little calendars to make it simple. Again, it's very clean, it's very well laid out, and you can make it essentially look at exactly how you want to. So Yeah, it took a while, you know, sort of going back and forth to which type of software we wanted to use. Okay, are we going to go iPad? Are we going to go? So it, you know, it did take a while, but I think we've got there eventually, and I'm really pleased with the way it looks at the moment. I'm really pleased, and I'm really excited when we get the tablets with. They're on the sort of, we've ordered them, so they're going to be arriving soon. So as soon as we have those, I'm really excited to take them out into the field and start testing them. So yeah, thank you very much. Really enjoyable project to work on.
Thank you, Sophie. Thank you. That's been great. Great. Okay. Yeah, I was interested actually what you were saying about the sort of the outputting the data at the end. And you're saying your plan is that would then sit within the HER.
It can do straight away. So if for example, if there's a project the HER wants to add to a record, or you know, even create one, then at least that data's there and can just go straight up on there.
But so in terms of digital archiving, then you'd be saying, well, it sits within the HER and therefore it's preserved.
Yeah,
there.
yeah. Or if they, you know, if we then go down the route of sending it to maybe the Royal Commission or something like that, at least it's all there and can be straight away, you know, sent off in a hopefully an easy format.
Right. Oh, I see Scott's you raised your hand, Scott. Have you got?
Yeah. Hi, Sophie. Is it your intention to use this in commercial archaeology, or is it going to be for sort of community-based archaeology predominantly?
Well, we're hoping that we can use it on site in commercial terms. You know, it's one of our hopes. And if I closed it now, but essentially I've already created my main thing was I wanted to create it for community groups in terms of I wanted to build it, and so I've used the exact same format that was agreed with the other three trusts. So it's the exact same one that will be hopefully then can be, if they want to, shared with the other trusts, and then they can send it out. But yeah, we can use it commercially as well.
Yeah, I mean, it looks really well structured, I have to say. My experience of digital recording in the past has been it's been somewhat confusing in that you know, the structure is not particularly great, or I think the main problems when taking digital into the field is, certainly if you're using a centralized system and it's not decentralized, is signal connection.
Yeah.
So if you've got no internet connection, what do you do? And as you've already raised in the UK, inclement weather, you know, when it starts raining on your tablet, that's a bit of a problem.
It is.
So
it is.
I've often found that community excavations tend to take place in the nicer weather months, which is why I wondered if you were intending to kind of use it all year round in commercial.
Yeah, that's our hope. Like we said, not only because it makes it quicker, well, we're hoping anyway, but also trying to think of more environmentally friendly ways, even if we think, okay, we might not be, this weather's just awful, I don't think we're going to be able to do this, at least we can do it on those other times.
Yeah.
But also we spoke to Ninox, and it's lucky that we're able to use it, and all the tablets will have you know, a SIM card with mobile data, but it's also workable offline as well. It'll save the data. Okay. So at least then if we do have any problems, we can then take them back, upload the data, and then work that way.
That's really good, actually. That's really good redundancy, because as I say, I mean, systems I've used in the past didn't have that, and if you didn't have an internet connection, you were scuppered. There's nothing you could do. You just, you know, you get your notebook out and just make notes and fill it in later. That's really interesting.
No, and personally, I've never worked on any sort of digital recording thing, so this for me was completely new, and so I'm hoping at least that I've partially created something that we can use, and will be, the main thing is just user friendly. That was the one thing I was like, it's got to be user friendly, otherwise there's no point.
Yeah, well, like I say, it looks really clear. I'd be interested in how it progresses in the future.
Oh, lovely. Oh, thank you. I'll keep in touch.
Thanks.
So will I.
I think it's one of those things that's been been on the brink of becoming practical for the last 30 years.
Yeah.
I remember talking about sort of palm pads, and you know, that there was always this dream that could we make that link between the site record and getting it into sort of ready for post-X without having to do the bit in between.
It's all the typing.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. There's a question from Dan. Dan, if you want to, I can't see you. Oh, there you are. Yeah, if you want to.
Oh yeah. Hi, Sophie. Yeah, I realise it probably might be a bit of a silly question now, but I was wondering, you know, how is it easy to download onto a personal phone? I'm just thinking, like in on a community excavation, if people have their own phones and they do have an internet connection, whether everyone can work sort of individually on their own records simultaneously, or does it need to be on one, you know, tablet that's passed around, if you like?
No, well, at the moment, we've got 4 licenses, and we are looking into expanding that as well. We thought, let's trial it first, and then we'll look into expanding that. But it is perfectly usable on mobile phones. In fact, I've had this on my phone for about what feels like about a year. But it's perfect. It's really great. As I sort of showed very quickly at the end of the talk there, it's great in terms of again, I've said it sort of a lot of times, user friendly was the main thing, and I don't know. Oh no, I think it's going to be far too
bright to show it. I think.
Let's have a look.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So it is really sort of user friendly. You can update it straight away, and it works hopefully just as good as I'm hoping the tablets will. I'm excited to get the tablets and, like I said, take it out on site and hopefully start running with it.
Brilliant, great. And I suppose another thing about sort of the philosophy these days is that it may not be exact in moment, may not be completely perfect in the first iteration, but you can tweak it as you go along. And there used to be very much this idea that you can't move from the old way until the new way was absolutely
yes
running. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure for the first sort of couple of times when we go on site, we will. I can almost guarantee we'll have a couple of contact sheets just in the back, just in case. Yeah. But really, fingers crossed, this works and is just another way forward for us and also, but mainly for the community.
Right. Great. Well, thanks, Sophie, and thank all the speakers. I mean, it would now be traditional for us to have a round of applause for you all. It's been a very interesting afternoon, and it's very diverse, all sorts of things going on. And it's sort of quite exciting to see that we're trying out innovations in lots of different ways, and it is quite clear that that this is the right time to be doing archaeology. That the tools that are becoming available are going to make such a difference to the way we're going to work in the future. So thank you all on behalf of CIfA and the IFA Wales group, and I hope you may continue to attend the other sessions later on. Thank you very much.